Hello and welcome to the Abraham Lincoln exhibit. Abraham Lincoln was a senator, a congressman, and eventually the 16th president of the United States for 2 terms. He had a very rough life, but also many great successes. In this tour, we will walk through his life and see the many trials and difficulties Lincoln went through, along with the many successes he had, and eventually end up at the day of his death. Abraham Lincoln was born on February 12, 1806 in Kentucky in a log cabin. When Abraham was 10 years old, his mother passed away from a common illness known as milk sickness. It was caused by drinking milk or other dairy products or eating meat from a cow that had eaten white snake root. A year later, his father married Sally Johnson. Lincoln described her as a good and kind mother. He never went to college, just primary school. In 1828, Lincoln's sister died from giving birth to her first child at the age of 28. In March of 1830, Lincoln and his family moved to Illinois and built his famous log cabin. In 1831, Abraham Lincoln, age 23, ran for legislature but was defeated. For a while, Lincoln did not know what he wanted to do. In 1832, the Black Hawk War broke out. In April, Lincoln enlisted and was elected as captain of a group. He later re-enlisted as a private after his group disbanded. He served a total of 3 months but did not fight in the battle. After he was discharged, he worked for a village store that soon went out of business. He was soon employed at another village store, but it quickly closed after his arrival. He became in debt. He had nowhere to go but was forced to stay with his friends. He considered working as a blacksmith or studying law. His next position was charge of a post office. The post office failed and closed down. Lincoln had a streak of very bad luck, and election time was drawing near. In 1834, he ran for legislature, and people put his name into the ballot box like this more than any other. So Lincoln won with the highest margin for any candidate, and then he was re-elected in 1836. During his term in office, he developed an interest in studying law, so he began to study and read books of law. In 1836, he earned his license for law, and in 1837, Lincoln moved to Springfield, Missouri to practice it. In 1838 and 1840, Lincoln's party nominated him as Speaker, but he was not elected. After 1840, he declined a re-election to legislature. During 1836, Lincoln fell in love with a woman named Mary Owens. He proposed to Mary Owens later that year, and she turned him down. Lincoln suffered an episode of deep depression. In 1839, he met a woman named Mary Todd at a dance and fell in love with her. The next year, they became engaged. On January 1st, 1841, Lincoln broke off the engagement and had another episode of depression. Lincoln became re-engaged with Mary Todd the next summer, and on November 4th, 1842, they married. They had 4 boys, including one who died at the age of 3 from an illness he developed at only 2 months old. This boy in the picture of Abraham Lincoln is another one of his sons, Tad Lincoln. In 1846, Lincoln was elected to Congress and served 1 term in the U.S. House of Representatives. During this term, he firmly expressed his disagreement with President Polk, believing that the war with Mexico was unnecessary and the troops did not need to be kept there. Lincoln felt that Americans have moved to a place that was not theirs and initiated a war. Lincoln recognized that he would not be a candidate for re-election into Congress for a 2nd term, so while serving his 1st term in Congress, Lincoln campaigned for General Zachary Taylor for presidency. Abraham Lincoln became active in government, giving speeches across many states while campaigning for General Taylor. In 1849, Lincoln made an appeal to the Supreme Court that was denied. Because of the denial, Lincoln pursued practicing law more instead of participating in government. In 1851, Lincoln's father passed away. When the 1852 elections came, Lincoln was on the Scott electoral ticket but was less determined in campaigning and did not try as hard to win, therefore lost the election. On May 29, 1856, Lincoln helped organize the Republican Party of Illinois. At the first Republican convention, Lincoln got 110 votes for vice presidential nomination, which helped him get a lot of national attention. On 7 different dates in 1858, 7 events known as Lincoln and Douglas debates, which this poster advertises, took place which expressed both Douglas's and Lincoln's political opinions about several subjects, most notably slavery. I believe we shall not have peace upon the question of slavery until the opponents of slavery arrest the further spread of it, and place it where the public mind shall rest in the belief that it is the course of ultimate extinction. This was said by Lincoln at the Ottawa debate. On November 16, 1860, Abraham Lincoln was voted President of the United States. He won with 180 of 303 possible electoral votes and 40% of the popular vote. A month later, South Carolina seceded from the United States, followed by Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas. He gave his first inaugural address, shown here, on March 4, 1861. A month later, the Civil War broke out with shots fired from the Confederates on Fort Sumter. 3 days later, President Lincoln issued a proclamation calling military action. After 2 more days, Virginia succeeded. North Carolina, Tennessee, and Arkansas followed over the next 5 weeks. The war went on for many years, and by the 3rd year, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. This proclamation was declared to motivate and give purpose to the soldiers, causing them to fight much harder and result in many battles won, proving the proclamation a success. On December 8, 1863, Lincoln, shown in this picture, issued a proclamation of amnesty and Reconstruction to restore the Union. A few months later, Lincoln was nominated for a second term as president, and in November, he was re-elected as president, defeating George B. McClellan, the Democratic nominee. Lincoln got 212 out of 233 votes and 55% of the popular vote. On March 4th, President Lincoln gave his second inaugural address. There was great celebration on April 9th and 10th, 1865, because the Union had defeated the Confederacy at the Appomattox Courthouse when General Lee surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant. On the 14th, only 5 days after Lincoln and the Union won the Civil War, Booth received information that Lincoln and his wife would see the play Our American Cousins at the Ford Theater at 8:30. Booth arrived at approximately 9:30 and had his horse waiting for him outside. About 10:13 p.m., during the 3rd act of the play, John Wilkes Booth shot President Lincoln in the head. Booth jumped off the balcony, fell 11 feet, and broke a bone in his leg. Booth immediately got up and left before anyone had grasped or could react to what had happened. Booth escaped and hid in a barn. When Booth refused to leave the barn, they set the barn on fire and then shot him when he still refused to leave. The next morning at 7:22, President Lincoln died. So that concludes the Abraham Lincoln exhibit. Does anyone have any questions? Yes?
What motivated John Wilkes Booth to assassinate Lincoln?
Mr. Lincoln gave a speech about the possibility of giving blacks voting rights, and this caused Booth to become enraged and do what he did. Is there any more questions? Yes.
What was the Gettysburg Address about?
The Gettysburg Address was a speech given to honor soldiers that died in the Battle of Gettysburg. It made the battleground a cemetery for all the soldiers that fought there. I will take one more question. Yes.
What caused the states to secede for the U.S.?
The Confederate States seceded because they did not support Lincoln because they believed he would get rid of slavery, which all the states favored. Okay, that will be all. Thank you for joining us at the Abraham Lincoln exhibit.